Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest Periscope video by my good self. I'm Kevin Reid. I'm here at the first AdvanceTrack Conference. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Gary Turner of Xero, and Gary's just done a good hour speech for an enraptured audience. Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, Kevin. I'm not sure if they were enraptured, but maybe a little bit interested.
So it's the start of a busy week. We've got a Accountex tomorrow, and will you be in attendance?
Yes, I'll be there on the second day on Thursday this week. So some big things that we're expecting to see pop out at Accountex. Obviously, making tax digital is a big theme for everybody, so I think we'll see a lot of that. And we've got a couple of interesting announcements. We did a benchmarking report on how accountants are actually adapting to cloud technology, and we're releasing that. And so lots of really interesting findings and insights.
It seems to have been a slow process. I mean, we've seen software as a service. You know, this has been kicking around for 10 to 15 years, but it now seems it just is on everyone's consciousness.
I think up until maybe a year or so ago, it was generally, if you were an accountant or a business, then adoption of cloud technology was still discretionary. It was still optional. You could do it if you wanted to gain the advantage. But I think what's happened in the last year is it's flipped and it's now essential. I think, and that's going to increase even more so in the next 5 years. And so I think we've got to some kind of adoption tipping point where many thousands of accounting firms that perhaps had it on the back burner were dabbling, had a couple of people working on cloud software, but generally weren't really doing anything. Certainly in the conversations and meetings that we're having, we're seeing that shift really changing. And I think MTD will have a big part to play in that.
But I was going to say, we've seen a lot of big things come out of on the tax and payroll side and pensions in the last few years. Has that kind of pushed everyone?
So I think MTD has had a part to play in it. I think automatic enrolment. So this year, 750,000 SMBs have to roll out a pension scheme. So I think those kind of regulatory changes will be accelerating it, but it was happening anyway. I mean, we've been plugging away at this for a while now.
Regulation and red tape are always horrible, and you know, for a government, you know, and when in coalition that spoke a lot about making things easier for business. I think there's an argument that perhaps that hasn't happened. However, this is driving a conversation between the accountant and the client, and accountants really having to get to grips with what service are they going to provide.
Absolutely. You don't want to be the last analog accountant in the UK and everything else has gone online and digital in the next 5 years. And the client experience and expectations for what they want their accountant and bookkeeper to do for them has changed as well. And so it's now the big shift. And we've been talking about it for a long time, but it's now essential. It's no longer optional. And so the challenges that accountants face is, how do I do that? I think increasingly the majority of accountants in the UK will go, yep, I accept it, we have to do it, I see why we have to do it, but the challenge they face is how. And so we see our role changing from not necessarily needing to be the cheerleaders for this change and adoption, but how do we help you make that change? And so what we're announcing at Accountex this week is some research that we've done. We've looked at a whole range of accountants at different stages of that evolutionary change, and we're playing back some interesting findings from that about how the ones that are managing it successfully are doing so. But it's game on now. The government's forcing it, HMRC's forcing it, and it's just actually a really logical progression for technology anyway. The cloud is now here, it's now established, and I think in the next 10 years will be a complete and wide-scale adoption of it.
Okay, so touching on some of the themes from your talk earlier, you spoke of AI and machine learning, the topics that you know on everyone's agenda. But as with the cloud, what does that actually mean? How does it apply to us? You're moving in that direction. Can you explain what that is and why it's important to accountants?
So I think the interesting thing, and machine learning and artificial intelligence are really very topical at the moment. Everybody's talking about them. And it's really easy to talk about it. Some of us actually then have to go and do it. So we're doing the doing part of that. And we think that if you take the basic principles of SMBs really struggle with accounting, and no amount of great design and software can overcome the fact that accounting is still complex. We see that in the evidence of the number of error corrections that accountants need to do. So it's over 3 million a month errors and mispostings are fixed by accountants on Xero.
And yeah, that's running through your platform. It's an absolutely staggering number.
And that's getting bigger all the time. There's 10 million unique chart of account codes in Xero. And so we can build great and easy to use software, but we think the next level of improvement and usability and accessibility will be driven through automation. How can we make the accounting complexity go away or be at least invisible? And so we're now in the wild with a couple of projects that we're testing where we're applying machine learning to, can Xero do a better job of coding an invoice or coding a transaction than a human can? And actually we're getting some really interesting insights that in a lot of cases they can. And so we think that that will mean that accounting becomes more of a background task that software will do, freeing up the small business to focus on running the business and actually saving the accountant and bookkeeper from doing a lot of that error correction that they have to do at the moment. So some pretty mundane applications of it, but we think are actually quite far-reaching in terms of benefit.
And I think that's a topic that that relatively narrow way of applying machine learning. I think we'll hear more of that from you, and I assume that will expand out as they get better at learning. MTD, what's happening? You know, it seems to be up in the air, but surely we can't all be on a hiatus.
I don't think it's up in the air. I mean, it is for the period of the election for the next few weeks. So there's obviously not going to be any radical change or update, but it has to happen. You know what I mean? We have to move away from, whether you agree with the speed at which the change is coming down the line or not, moving to a more digital engagement with government must be ultimately a good thing. As taxpayers, never mind what it means for us as businesses. And so it's absolutely coming down the line. The pilot kicked off about a month ago. It's still very early days. I think it was right to taper the ramping. So initially it was April next year for everybody, but it's now only going to be a very small number that we from April next year. But that still means that over 3 million micro entities and sole traders are going to be on MTD filing in the next 2 years. So still a huge challenge. And so we see our job. Anybody can build an integration with an API. I mean, APIs are the common currency of how you build and connect software and services together. And so that part's not so interesting for us, and we'll have Xero capable of dealing with the new APIs when they're fully available. The challenge that the profession faces is actually changing client behavior. And nobody's really thinking about that at the moment. So we're investing a lot of our effort into how can we build tools and software, how can we take what we've already got and augment that to ensure that the accounting firms and the bookkeeping firms don't just get washed over by a whole load of really low value remedial bookkeeping and tax compilation work. You imagine, it might not be quite as bad as this, and HMRC might shoot me for saying it, but imagine if every month was like January. That's not a great place to be for an accountant. If every month is like the last month of the tax filing season. And so how can we bring technology not to address the filing part, because that's relatively straightforward, but how can we change the workflows? How can we bring automation? How can we bring technology solutions to the client aspect of that?
Because there must be a temptation. There will be accountants that think it would be great if I had another 200 clients, but if it's actually 4 times or 5 times as much work and struggling to bill them for that, strategically that just doesn't make sense.
And it goes counter to where the industry's been going for the last 20 years. I mean, every industry keynote event that you've been to has been talking about move away from compliance and move into advisory. And that would be really unfortunate if MTD succeeds in taking everybody back to the kind of dark ages of compliance bookkeeping again. And so that can't happen. Because if it does, then that's really kind of existential for a lot of accounting firms. It's not really where you want to be. And so we're excited by the challenge, big challenge, and lots of things to still uncover. We've got to get more information from HMRC. But as a technologist, the kind of technology guy in me thinks that we must be able to bring some benefit to the kind of the grind element of that. Because if this results in, as I say, kind of dark ages of bookkeeping, then that's not a great outcome for anybody.
You know, for accountants with existing clients, if you can get to a place where this is providing better data into the accountant's business, that means it puts them in a position to help their clients make better decisions, which is good. Of course, then doing that for another 500 clients that come on board that have never used an accountant, never used software, it's a lot of questions around, do we want to take on all these new clients? Can we deal with the ones we've got?
And that's where we think that, and again, it's possibly oversimplified to say that machine learning and automation will help there. It might help 10% of the cases or 50% of the cases, who knows. But do we think that we're going to educate millions of SMBs on the principles of accounting in order for that not to be a burden to the accountant? I don't think we are. I think automation and simplification of accounting and bookkeeping at the business level is the only way that this is going to work. And so that's where we're investing a lot of our time. The MTD filing part is really important, but actually it's the kind of final 5% of the journey. We're working on the first 95%. And a lot of what we do in Xero today already caters for that. So things like the direct connections we have with banks and bank feeds, again, trying to compress that workload of bookkeeping and record keeping. But we think there's opportunity to do more, and particularly since it's such a wholesale change in behavior. So a long way to go till we get to the end of that. But I think, MTD is kind of quiet at the moment, but I think it'll be back with a vengeance in June or July.
It's something to look forward to, and I'm sure it's going to be, as you said, a big hot topic at Accountex over the next couple of days. Thank you for watching. I'll be chatting to Vipul Sheth of AdvanceTrack a bit later on. So thank you for watching. Join us again soon.